Christmas has the potential to be the most wonderful time of year. As we think about the gift of God's Son, baby Jesus being born, Mary and Joseph, that first morning together, the angels in the sky, the shepherds coming to worship, but it can also be one of the most selfish times of the year as people think about what they want for Christmas, how it should go, how they want to get a certain gift, and it can all become about me. So, is there a way to prevent Christmas becoming so much about me and it really becoming what Jesus intended it to be?
Let's see what the Bible says about that. Hey, welcome to our podcast. I'm so glad that you clicked on this for today. It is going to be a great one. And I would go ahead and say, for those of you on YouTube, if you would like and subscribe to our channel, we have podcasts coming out every Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. And by liking this video, it helps the algorithm and getting this video into other people's channels. So that's super great. And then if you're listening on Spotify or whatever it is, you can share this with someone else. We would very much appreciate that.
Yeah. So I think it's every person's goal, usually, I would say especially Christians at this time of year, to make sure they try to avoid all the commercialism and the meism that can come Christmas. It can all become about what I want. Exactly. And no one really wants that at the end of the day. I think everybody knows when that happens, by the time the holiday is over, you're worn out and you're frustrated and things didn't go the way you wanted. It didn't go that way for your kids. And you want to avoid that. You want to avoid that for yourself, for your friends, and if you have children, and for your family as well. So I know growing up, I was an only child, and that sets me up right away for being spoiled. I recognize that. I was the only child of parents who were much older when they had me, and there wasn't a lot of talk about faith in our home. So Christmas, obviously, for me, became all about me. The presents under the tree were primarily for me. Yeah. There was no one else, just my mom and dad and me. We didn't have a lot of family even come over for the holidays. So if there were presents under the tree, I knew they were pretty much for me.
You weren't buying them for your parents, putting them under the tree. Yeah.
Exactly. And of course, then you add to that kind of the cultural flow of the day, whether it was then or it's now. It's like, okay, what do you want for Christmas? Are you making a list for Santa to tell, so you can say what you want for Christmas? Go tell Santa what you want for Christmas. Yeah. It becomes all about me. And then you put a tree in the house, and then that tree is usually a focal point. And so you're staring at it every day to see which present showed up under there. Yeah. You're matching, at least I was, my list with what looked like the presents that were under the tree, if they were the right thing, if it really was what I wanted or not. And all that, And it led to, sadly, some happiness, but later it led to some sad Christmases for me, if just being honest. I had a list of things I wanted, and they didn't show up under the tree. I did not get them. And so I can remember, this is going to sound terrible, I can remember some Christmases where I'm sad, I'm mad, I'm frustrated.
Even though you had presents and all this stuff. You opened all these things.
Even though there are presents, my mom and dad love me. Yeah. We're in a nice home. We live with provision. Yeah. There's love in the home. I'm aware of all of that. But because I didn't get what I wanted for Christmas, at the end of Christmas, I was upset. Yeah. That's not the way this holiday is supposed to go. This is not the way it's supposed to be celebrated. Yeah. So because it was all about me in my, young life, it led to some sad days for me at Christmas.
And I think like that, it's a sad story from childhood's perspective, but I think that happens so much to adults even these days as well, because it's the same mentality that carries over just in a different season of life. Again, you were saying Christmas was all about you and the things you received and things you got and the things you got to do and all this stuff. And I think that's so accurate to the way in which adults live today. A lot of the times, it's all about what gifts can I get from these other people, or, how can I make this all about me and people talk about me? And we have the best, most social media worthy Christmas and all this kind of stuff, overspending. Now you're frustrated. You want to, do good things and hope that other people will buy you gifts and all this kind of stuff, over decorating again for the social media, and then overdoing yourself, going everywhere and busying. And, you don't want people to think less of you. And, you want to look a certain way and have all the exteriors rocking just great and nice, and that all those things are self-focused, and it's all Christmas instantly becoming about you and your family and how people see you. Right. And then you're like, Christmas is actually the worst time of year,
That's true.
So it can be the most draining, most tiring and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, even for many people, they think, "Oh no, that's not what I'm doing. This is all about Christmas,"
Yeah.
and they want it to be about
Christmas
Christmas
spirit.
Yeah, but because of that, it can turn into a heavy, me-driven holiday, and it becomes a sad experience.
Yeah. So how can we avoid that happening?
Yeah, I think the good news is we can't avoid that happening. And if we go back to the roots of what Christmas is all about, Christmas didn't start and then all of a sudden Jesus get added to it. It began with the celebration of the birth of Christ. So I think if we're going to avoid having a me-focused Christmas and holidays, there's a couple of things there's several things actually that we should keep in mind. And one is that I have to be aware that there is a default version in the culture today that is more me-driven, and it wants to make it not about Jesus. It wants to make it more about self and more about just the holiday and about getting presents. And if you've been around for a while, you can remember experiences when the holiday became not such a pleasant thing. If you go back to some of the 90s when Black Friday sales were really on the Friday and people were camping out on the Thursday night, right, Thanksgiving, and they're lined up, and then the doors open. They got to where they're opening earlier and earlier, so it's like midnight, and people are rushing in and they're fighting and they're trying to get the gift before someone else does. Yeah. It turned it into a nightmare. That's why today Black Friday is like a whole month long.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
before it ever gets here. Yeah. So. Yeah, it can become like that. And the culture is bent that way. The culture is not focused on what Jesus has done, the gift of God's Son, the sacrifice for us, the love that has come from heaven for us. That's not what it is. So you have to recognize that there is this cultural pull already in the direction of making it all about me.
Yeah. Which I will say, there are some people who say, see, and because of that, Christmas is just another one of those pagan holidays. And if you look up the roots to all of it, it's all pagan. And actually, you Christians who celebrate Christmas are like worshiping Satan. Right. Here's the awesome thing. We did a podcast on this last year called Is Christmas Pagan? So if you're wanting to, just go ahead and check out that one.
That's
just a little podcast plug there.
Yeah. So again, I think we have to recognize that there is this default pull, almost like a gravity that's trying to pull the real meaning away from what Christmas really is, from this idea of being loved by God, the gift of His Son, and knowing that there is life in Jesus, and that giving is more blessed than receiving. Yeah. And that's, of course, what God does, and this is the picture. So if you recognize that right away, okay, there is a pull in the direction away from what I really want this to be, then you can begin to fight against that. But I think second with that is you have to intentionally do the work of making the Christmas season Jesus-centered. You have to do the work of making it giving-focused and worship-filled. It doesn't just happen. There's such a pull from the culture that if you're not intentional about it, you'll get swept away by it. So, of course, Christmas is really about the birth of Jesus, the gift of God's Son. It's about God moving heaven and earth to provide a gift of atonement and sacrifice for us when we were undeserving. It's the story of God coming in flesh and blood like us so that we could know redemption. And it is all about giving and not just about receiving. So I think if we start there, then it helps us understand, all right, well, how do we start doing this then?
Definitely. Yeah, I was going to say that's like the mental understanding ways in which we can avoid the me-focused Christmas. So I think it would be beneficial if we talked about what are the tangible ways that we can avoid the me-centered Christmas that so many people fall into.
Exactly. So we'll do that. We'll talk through some tangible things we can put into place and some ways we can make that happen during the holidays, whether you are alone, or whether you're married, whether you have children or grandchildren. There's some very tangible, practical ways. We're going to walk through a list of some of those, but I want to encourage you to stay through till the end of the podcast today, because at the end, we're going to talk about one of the most overlooked ways of avoiding a me-centered Christmas. And it really, to me, is kind of the core of this whole thing today. But let's talk about some ways that we tangibly can make that happen in our home and in our life. I would say one of the things that's necessary for us personally to start with is make sure you come into the holiday season, the Christmas season, making spending time with God a priority. It's so easy for that to not be during the holidays. I mean, you get busy, You're going to parties.
Yeah.
You're out. You're
Your
shopping.
routine is already gone.
Yeah, routine is upside down, and it's easy to say, well, I don't have time to get up early today. I don't have time to stay up late. I've got so much tomorrow. And it's easy to push aside spending time alone with God. And this is perhaps kind of where it all starts. The moment you let that slip, then everything else will begin to take over. So if that means setting aside time and saying, I'm going to carve out a regular time in my day or my week, whatever it is for you, where I'm going to center my heart on Jesus, this is going to be your anchor to carry you through this season so that it becomes Jesus focused and not me focused. So if that means getting a devotional, if that means using a Bible app that has a devotional plan for you to walk through daily, if that means practicing something with the Advent season, whatever it is for you, find that so that you can stay anchored in the midst of this, that this season is about the gift of God's Son for us. It's about Jesus. Anchor yourself there.
Yeah.
And then with that, I'd say pray and determine to guard your heart against the tidal wave of meism in the world today.
Yeah.
The scripture says in Proverbs, I love this version of it. It says, be careful how you think. Your life is shaped by your thoughts.
So good.
I think probably
really good.
New King James says, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Or guard your heart with all diligence. I think that's what actually is, guard your heart with all diligence, for out of it flow the issues of life. But it's true. Be careful how you think. Guard your heart with all diligence, for from it flow the issues of life. You will be shaped by what you think about. And if you don't pray and determine to guard your heart against selfishness, you'll be caught up in the tidal wave of it.
Yeah, and you'll see that impacting your family. Like so many people, they want their kids to not be the kid who's like, "Where's my presents? I want to open first," and all that. Because that is not fun. Whenever you're around that kid who's always just about themselves all the time because they've been given every single thing, and so people want to model that in their homes. I think that, again, the Christian life, the Christian parent wants their kid to have more joy in giving rather than just in receiving. And so I think it's so important, like this is saying, be careful how you think. Your life is shaped by your thoughts. Your parenting style is shaped by your thoughts. I just yesterday was seeing a thing. It's a very popular, saying, and it says your thoughts impact your words, and your words impact your actions. Your actions form habits. Your habit forms a character, and your character forms a legacy.
That's true.
And so this whole idea, you could, take it over into your family and parenting and all that stuff. And your end result is all started based on your thoughts, on how you think. And then how are you modeling to your kids and to your, siblings, if you're, you have others who you're trying to influence and impact, with a heart that is not going to be overtaken with selfishness, but a heart that is wanting to give. And
we'll talk about that more today, about children especially, because they're born with the default also that says me, me, me. I mean,
exactly.
That's where they are. That's where they start. They don't start with sacrifice and being patient.
Let me lay down my desires for you.
I want to give more than I receive. It's not natural to them. And so you have this, the pull is not just from outside in the world, the pull is inside the heart as well. And if you've got children, that pull is even greater. And so you have to be intentional about that. And so, adding to our list here of things to do that are practical and tangible, I'd say make it your goal to intentionally and generously bless those that God has placed in your life. Again, this is more from the personal side at this point. You're going into, okay, Jesus, this is about you. Okay, Jesus, I want to guard my heart against all selfishness. And now I want to make it my goal to intentionally and generously bless the people God has placed in my life, whether it's my wife or my child or a friend or a neighbor or a grandparent, whoever it is, that you enter in with, okay, I want to be a blessing to them. I want to give generously and intentionally to them. Now we're starting to move out of the core of who we are, and this is starting to overflow into our life.
And again, like with this, whenever you hear this, you're like, well, I do not have the money to bless every person in my life. And you think about all of these things, and I'm just reminded of a story from Mark. Just in Jesus' ministry, there's a woman who gives seemingly a small amount compared to what other people had given. But Jesus says, this person has given more than all of you. And they're like, how can this be? She just gave a small bit.
Right.
But he says, it's not out of just the abundance, the excess that she has that she's giving, but it's even to where she's sacrificing the little bit that she has, she's giving for the sake of someone else, you know? And so I think that's so important as well, you know, for the person who says, I don't have the money for that. It's like, okay, not everything has to be monetary though, you know,
that's
but
true.
In being a blessing and giving of your time, giving of, you know, your space, your resources, whatever it may be, but having a mindset that's bent on giving more than just consuming.
Yeah, I think I appreciate that because it's true. We talk about intentionally and generously blessing someone. Our mind goes to money.
Like $1,000 to best friend or something.
Yeah, no. There are other things that you can give that are intentional and generous besides just money. I know when Heather and I first were married, we didn't have the money to give even our own parents extravagant gifts or even just basic gifts.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? And so we got creative and we actually, for the first, I would say 5 years plus, we were making Christmas presents for our parents.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And we used our talents. And everybody should consider, you know, what is the talent I have? For me, I could draw. And so I'm not proud of these drawings that I did, but it came out of love and it was meant for love. I drew some portraits of Heather's parents and my parents and gave them to them for Christmas. It was a gift from Heather and I. And then after that, again, this is not because we are great at this, but we knew our parents loved us. We knew our parents enjoyed music. So I had the ability and I made some recordings of Heather and I singing and gave that to our parents.
Yeah.
And I could do the artwork, so I made a little packaging for it, like it was a cassette tape you'd buy in a store or something. And they absolutely loved them to the parents and grandparents.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It didn't cost us a whole lot of money. It cost us some time, but it was intentional and it was a generous gift. We were giving of our talents that we had. They did not go on to be, you know, bestsellers in the stores by any means. Yeah. But they kept them and they played them and they loved them. And it was a gift. And again,
it was the idea that I'm giving instead of just being like, well, can't have anything. I don't have anything to give. So tough. But the idea of I want to give. I don't want to just consume, but I want to be a blessing as well.
Yeah, and taking the time, you know, maybe your talents are not in arts or crafts or music or any of those things. Hey, writing a letter to express your love to someone, giving, another thing that we've done in the past is we would give coupons that say, come over for a dinner at our house, or we'll one free evening where we come and clean your house, you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We were just giving of what we had, which was not money, but it was our time and our energy and our love. So make it your goal, be intentional and generous.
Yep.
And then with that, being generous without the expectation for someone to give to you in return.
Yeah, that's so good.
Now
you weren't expecting your parents to be like, hey, record an album for me now and send it back.
Right. You know, that this is part of what we do as Jesus followers. This is what he did. He gave, and he gave out of grace. There was no string attached. It was a gift of love. And so this is probably one of the bigger ways that you defeat meism in Christmas is you practice and you teach your children to practice. Let's give without an expectation of getting something in return. And if we get something, it's just a gift of grace from that person. And if we don't, we're totally happy with that. We're not giving to get. And Jesus said this. Jesus tells a story. He said, when you give a dinner or a banquet, don't invite your friends and family and relatives and rich neighbors. If you do, they will invite you in return and you will be paid back.
Wow.
That is one way you can live.
Yeah.
But Jesus goes on to say, he says, when you give a feast, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind. They cannot pay you back. But God will bless you and reward you when his people rise from death. So there's a day coming in the future. He says there'll be a reward, but the real blessing is in giving now without an expectation of something in return. This is a way to really defeat meism, with at Christmas time. And then with it, this is something that all of these are things that have come out really out of mine and Heather's life. But fill your home, fill your car, your office space, your life with Jesus-filled Christmas music. Now, I enjoy some Christmas music, and Heather and I will listen to them throughout the holidays, and we'll switch the styles up. Sometimes I'm listening to some Christmas cozy jazz, around the house in the evening. Sometimes you'll listen to some throwback Michael W. Smith, Amy Grant, Larnell Harris, Christmas. But sometimes it's the Gaithers, Christmas.
Yeah.
But our goal is going to be enjoy some Christmas music, yes, but let's listen to some good Jesus story Christmas music. It will keep you grounded. It will keep you focused. And often, we're listening to those songs, and you just stop all of a sudden, like, oh my goodness, that's such a great song. The message is moving. You're brought to tears.
Yep.
This helps you stay grounded in the midst of such a tidal wave pull against that kind of Christmas.
Yeah, just the other day, me and Chloe, we got a little sign from Walmart, and it's away in a manger, kind of like you'd see in a hymnal with some art stuff behind it. And I was holding our daughter, and I was like reading it and singing it, and I was just like, wow, these songs were written with such intentionality of, hey, this season is meant to happen, for a reason, that we would remember Jesus,
right,
and that we would remember his birth, and that we would remember the gift that this is. And it's just like incredible. I'm like,
it is
holding our child, and I'm like, this is insane. Like that Jesus came in the flesh as a baby.
Yes. So fill your home, fill your life with that kind of music.
Yeah.
And then with that, be intentional to carve out times when you just sit and enjoy the season.
Yeah.
Maybe here in Texas it finally gets cold enough to have a fire in the fireplace, and you grab some coffee or hot chocolate, and you turn on some tunes instead of something else on TV, and you just sit and take it all in. Maybe it's a movie that you're watching, but you carve out time to just let that all soak in, to go against the tide of meism and make it about Jesus.
Yeah, it's good.
Well, let's shift and talk about, what if you are having people over to your home? Because those so far have been more personal and inside your own family unit. But what if you are having people over to your home? Here again is another tidal wave pull to just get caught up in the flow of Christmas as usual.
Yeah, got to make the house look perfect. Got to be perfect. Got to have all the things, impress all the people, and
give the right gifts, and don't create any awkward moments.
Yeah.
But this is the real opportunity to bring Jesus into the season, and maybe for some people who have never experienced that before. So if you're having people into your home, here's a real chance to show them the love of Christ. So if they're coming into your home, one, instead of just talking about yourself that night, ask them questions about their year and their life. It's easy to say, well, let me tell you about my life and what I'm doing and what I have and what we've seen. No, use this to give yourself away, to make it more about them than yourself. 1 Corinthians says, let no one seek his own good, but the good of his neighbor. And so seek to be a blessing to those who come into your home, and then intentionally shift the focus away from what they can do for you to what you can do for them. Be thinking about that before the event happens, before they come over. What can you do to be a blessing to them that night, to meet whatever needs they have, to make them feel honored and loved and special? And then create that moment that is a Jesus-filled moment. It's okay to stop and say, hey, everybody, tonight before we eat, or maybe it's after you eat, let's go around the room and talk about what you are thankful for, or tell us something about a favorite Christmas memory, or what the gift of Jesus means to you. That may be new for you. That may be fresh, but this will inject your home with the very presence and love of Christ in that moment. And it may be the first time that those that you're inviting over have ever experienced anything like that. Yeah. And yes, it may be awkward for the first 30 seconds or minute, but you may be completely surprised. I'm going to guess that you will be. You'll be surprised at what people will say and how it changes the entire tone of the evening. There's been events. We've done this in our home, had family over, friends over. I can't tell you what I put on my plate that night to eat. I can't tell you what all happened during the time they were there, but I can instantly recall exactly what that person or those people said when we had a time like that together. That part remained, and that shifted the focus, and that shaped the entire evening.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's important to do.
It's so important, again, because I think in asking questions like that, it makes people think about this time, and then it makes people put words to what they truly believe and are thinking and are feeling. And it opens the door to more depth in that relationship. And that's so important.
All right, let's just go ahead and step on all of our own toes, everybody's toes, as we think about this next one here, because there is a piece that goes with the holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas, that is a very natural piece, but it's one we should really guard, and it is this. Be careful about overfeeding your appetite. And I'm not talking about just overeating, but I'm talking about if you make it your regular routine to just let whatever appetite you have be satisfied by food, you're actually feeding the monster of your flesh. If your routine is, I have an urge, I'm going to fulfill it. I want this, I'm going to get it. That may feel good in the moment, but what you're actually doing is you're saying, whatever you want, I'll get you. And that may be fine for a piece of pecan pie, but if you're not careful, the next thing will happen is you'll find your flesh wanting to justify itself, wanting to get its way, wanting to hold a grudge, wanting to say something offensive.
That person did something, I'm saying it back.
Yes.
And there's no guard of...
And if you've given into your flesh every time it wants some pumpkin pie or pecan pie, you'll all of a sudden have a hard time telling it no when that word starts coming out of your mouth that you don't need to be saying. So Galatians 6:8 says, if you follow your selfish desires, you will harvest destruction. But if you follow the Spirit, you will harvest eternal life.
And again, not that you should be fasting through the whole Christmas holidays or anything like that. But to be aware of how you are responding to just every urge that may come upon you. And
so just be careful, be alert. You know, anytime you're feeding your physical appetite, you're also feeding another appetite. The Bible calls the flesh. So keep it under control. Enjoy some pecan pie by all means. But don't let the monster of the flesh drive and rule over everything during the holiday season.
Absolutely.
Now let's talk about those with children in the home, because this is a little bit different setting. Our conversation we have to have is, what do you do to help your children not be so me focused? Because it's just natural in them. It's obvious they want to have their way, do their thing, get their present, and they don't understand the sacrifice. They don't understand patience. They don't understand it's more blessed to give than receive. That has to be taught. So what do you do if you have children? I'd say, one, go ahead and be intentional about talking about the real meaning of Christmas. They don't know. And just because they've been around it doesn't mean that they understand it. And just because they've heard it for 2 or 3 years doesn't mean they understand it. So regularly teach the real meaning of Christmas, the real meaning of what it means to be loved by Jesus, the real meaning of what God has done by giving us his son.
And I would say even in that, instead of just all right, now let me lecture you on what the story of Jesus is, but ask questions, be interactive with it, get figures and, display them and all that kind of stuff. I think just to be creative with it, rather, it is great to read the story from Luke. I think that's awesome. We plan on doing that at our house, but at the same time, it's important to display it and make it to where it's interactive and to where they are engaged as well. And it's not just hey, lecture, turn your brain off. We'll see how this goes. Do this religious thing. And
again, for Heather and I, we had a nativity scene, which was great. Love that. I always like it to look nice. But Heather was like, well, let's get a nativity scene that the kids can play with so that we can interact with them. So, here get these little play school figures, there's plastic Joseph and Mary and the baby Jesus, and it became a more interactive element that we could use with the kids and grandkids.
Yeah.
And then there are a lot of great Jesus-centered Christian Christmas movies and videos that are worth watching. And some of them speak about sacrifice and love. And those are great to watch around this time, just to reinforce again. You know, the Bible talks about in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, every word is confirmed. It's good to have other voices saying what we're saying. It lends itself to greater credibility and buy-in from the children. And then find a way with your children to be a blessing to others. Talk about a way to maybe be a blessing to a grandparent or to a family member or to a neighbor or to someone you don't know. I remember one year when all 5 were at home, we decided we were going to do a Christmas wish program. And so we went and picked up a name at a local restaurant and found this person's name, did not know who they were, but knew they had said they were going to have not much for Christmas and had requested a certain gift item. We bought it. We are able to deliver it to their house. And this has been some time back. Yeah. And it was in a part of town. Yeah. It was in a part of town we'd never go to, and met someone we'd never met. We spent a little bit of time with them, gave them their gift, and prayed with them. And it was a memory for our family, and it taught a lesson. And it's important to do, to have meaningful moments like that. And then talk with your children about experiences and not just getting gifts.
Yeah.
Again, sometimes I get it. Moms and dads don't have all the money to get all the gifts that you want. Well, let's create some experiences, create some memories at home, around the tree or at the fireplace, or walking the neighborhood, or going and singing Christmas carols, or going and visiting someone who can't get out. All of those are memories that help shape Christmas into an experience that is about giving and not just receiving. And then one of the things that we did is, with 5 kids, we had opportunity for this, is to help teach the kids to be excited about giving to their siblings and not just receiving from their siblings. Yeah. And so we ended up drawing names, and one sibling would give a gift to another sibling. And so that began to be exciting about, well, what can we, Heather and I would encourage us, it was often Heather more than me. She would take them to the store, and they would talk about what they could get or what they could make that would be meaningful to the other sibling. And it just drives home this point that it really is more blessed to give than receive. And of course, kids are still going to be excited about receiving and what they're going to get under their tree. But we watched as the excitement really began to be about, man, I hope they're going to like this gift I got for them. I can't wait to see what they're going to say when they open this. They're going to love this. So I think with all of this, then it's important to know that we do this because this is what Jesus did for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't give with expectation of something in return. We don't give with complaining. We don't give with comparing. We give as God has moved in us and as He is working through us to be a blessing to someone else.
Yeah, exactly. And, like if our goal in parenting is that we would model the heart of God, our Creator, to our kids, this is just an absolutely perfect way. Yeah. And, it's a perfect way to do this and to show love and giving to others. I think it's just a beautiful thing.
It's good. So I told you earlier, I said, stay tuned till near the end. This is that moment where we talk about one of the most often overlooked ways to avoid having a me-focused Christmas. What I've seen over time, and I think the Bible obviously bears this out, is that anytime someone is self-focused, it's revealing an area in their life that they've not been filled by the love of Christ. It's an area that is a hole, a gap, where they have yet to experience healing or love or hope or redemption.
You're good.
And it's important to realize this is what Jesus came for, to heal the hurts, to remove the guilt, to remove the shame, to bring peace to the conflict and the trouble. And as we allow him in to do that in us, then we can actually overflow love from us.
Yeah.
But someone who is not experiencing that, they can't overflow because it's still an empty hole. And when there's an empty hole, then people are desperate
It's a vacuum
to fill it. The tidal wave comes rushing into the hole. And so everything is about them in that moment because they're trying to fill the hole. So Christmas becomes an even greater opportunity for it to be about me. I need the presents to help fill the hole. I need that person to say certain things to me to fill the hole. I need the attention of the family to fill my hole. I need all of this to happen so that I can fill the gaping hurt and hole and guilt and fear and shame in my heart. Someone who's me focused has a hole in their heart. And so if you're looking for your children, your parents, your family, the presents, or the holidays to fill that hole, you'll never find it in those things alone. Jesus has come to not just fill that hole, but to cause life to overflow from that hole.
Exactly.
And so when you come to this season and you realize that that baby born into that stable, lying in that manger, was given for you, for your fears, your shame, your guilt, your sin, and you personally receive his love into you, you will find love overflowing then for others. And you'll avoid not just a me-centered Christmas, but a me-centered life.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good.
This is the real message of Christmas. This is the real message of Scripture. Philippians 2 tells us, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility, count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look not only to his own interest, but also to the interest of others. Have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but he emptied himself by taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men, and being found in human form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. Therefore God has highly exalted him and bestowed on him the name that is above every name, so that at the name of Jesus every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father.
Yeah.
That is the formula, the recipe, the plan, the purpose of God to fill in you what has been lacking, so that life can overflow from you, so that you can have a Jesus-centered, Jesus-filled life. No more me-centered, me desperate, me hurting, me guilty, me shamed life. There's no life there.
Yep.
So I'm grateful that there is life in Jesus, and we celebrate that this Christmas.
Yeah, that's great.
So if we can answer any questions for you, feel free to comment on YouTube. Feel free to come visit us in person at Vertical Church Ovilla as we celebrate this life that is ours in Jesus Christ, and people are finding freedom every week in this knowing of Jesus and what he has for us. So thanks for joining us. May this Christmas season be Jesus-centered for you as we keep lifting him up and living him out.